Hello and welcome to Naval History Live. Today's topic is taking care of business allied style. We're going to be looking at refitting in the various yards and the experience of the ships involved in them. And this is going to be your introduction. I'm Dr. Alexander Clark. Hopefully I don't look too burning up. God knows what's that comes from. Probably that light. Let's see if we can make it look a bit better. Yeah, that makes me look less like I'm a piece of fried chicken without the batter. As you can see, I'm wearing a very special t-shirt today. I'm wearing the one which Jamie Seedall of Armoured Carriers is going to be incredibly jealous of. And if you look up, I can find where this roundel, etc. comes from. I can show you the actual aircraft. Well, a good approximation of it. There you go. This one. And as you can see, that is the Corsair 4, flown by Lieutenant R.H. Gray from HMS Formidable in 1945. And I get to wear that t-shirt today, which makes sense considering the subjects I'm going to be looking at. Right then, without much further ado, let's continue in. Oh, one thing I remember. So from now on, the system that we're going to be deciding topics, because I'm going to try and do at least 2 topics a week, which are videos like this, introductions. I'm going to keep, whilst I'm on lockdown, 2 seminar sessions on the Tuesdays and Thursdays going, and of course I'm going to keep the Sunday brew ships, which of course the book review sessions going. But the last 2 the 2 sort of seminar sessions might change once lockdown ends. It might go down to 1 a week, which combines both topics, which I've had an introduction video. Not sure. But no, the topics are going to continue to be chosen, are going to from now on be chosen by suggested topics from patrons on Patreon. And the 4 I like most are going to be put forward to a patron vote, and any the 2 top ones will be done. I'm going to pick 2 from a list on Discord that I like. Whatever the Discord people on the Discord server put on the list, I'm going to have a look down and see which one I like, and I'm going to go with it. And any interesting questions which come on Twitter or YouTube comments, I'm going to pick a couple of those a month. And then there's going to be a couple a month which are just things I'd like to do. So they're probably going to reflect whatever research I'm currently doing or whatever paper I'm currently working on. Anyway, hope you enjoy, and hope you're going to continue trying. Right, let's get on without much further ado to the first ship, which is HMS Victorious, aka USS Robin. The reason she's called the Trailblazer is I saw a lovely article which was written, which was she was a trailblazer of Britain going to America for its major refits, and she wasn't. She really wasn't. But it's still quite a cool title to give her, and frankly, she deserves it. She's a bit of a trailblazer because in September 1942, before Torch, she has an extended aircraft direction room, and use of aircraft direction room fitted, which is far bigger than what she'd have had previously and far more purpose-built and takes advantage of all the technology. And this is done in a UK yard. When she goes out to America for her refits, including having heavier catapults and all sort of fittings fitted, that's in 1943. In March, in January 1943, she's in Norfolk Navy Yard, where she has all sorts of refits to try and help her operate the heavier aircraft the Americans use. And then, although she transits through the Panama Canal, she bishes up herself a bit and a dock gate and lock gate, I think. And when they asked to pay a bill, the captain signs Lend-Lease, and nothing's ever mentioned again. I think possibly that was a young US Navy officer who was probably told off a fair bit by his seniors for impeding the flow of the desperately needed aircraft carrier to the Pacific Fleet so you can stand around aggrandizing yourself. There are times to stroke your ego, and there are times to get the ship out to fricking sea, man. It was probably one of the paraphrases of what was said to him. Leaving that to one side, when she gets to Pearl Harbor, she has the really strange experience that actually the Pearl Harbor, team fit the heavier arrestor wires needed for the Grumman Avenger aircraft, and appear to actually be more efficient and definitely are considered more, how to put it, on a war footing than the Norfolk yard they've been to previously. Make of that what you will, but it is interesting. Anyway, because of her very, very high quality fighter direction systems and all the other things she's got, very quickly, what happens is the admiral in charge of Task Force 14, which is her Saratoga, the US's only remaining aircraft carrier. Hornet has been sunken. Enterprise is in very, very bad state. It's being refitted. Along with the battleships North Carolina, Massachusetts, and Indiana, go on operations. And the officer in charge, Admiral DeWitt Ramsey, decides that he would rather put the Royal Navy's strike aircraft aboard the Saratoga, because she can launch a strike better and mass a strike better, and put the American fighters aboard Victorious, because Victorious can maintain far better fighter control. And this is because the American system is still very much at this point designed around the big boom, the big punch, the knockout blow, which will take out your enemy fleet, which you can understand. It works quite well if it works. The Royal Navy system, developed during the interwar and sort of really honed in the Mediterranean, is more about boom, 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 keeping up a constant flow of aircraft, keeping up a constant flow of and controlling and managing fighters. And, well, they do it well. She has plenty more refits in her career, but looks like that the 4 minutes I allocated is up for her. So I will quickly get on to HMS Warsprite before the rather large, overly sized tribal class destroyer that is Warsprite decides to take revenge. I will just add, though, that Victorious has a lovely time in Bombay having refit, and the crew have come from sort of Britain with its very much rationed austerity going on, and the colours in India just make a humongous impact. Okay, so Warsprite has actually had a nearly 2.4 mil refit between March 1934 and March 1937, so she's out for 3 years. The big point about that refit, and this is the reason that she's going to be refit later in the wars, is because, like most of the Queen Elizabeth class carriers, Queen Elizabeth class battleships, sorry, the carrier's a recent addition, they are made hugely more efficient in terms of fuel usage. Her fuel usage drops from 41 tons an hour to maintain 24 knots to 27. Now, to put that in terms, that means the same amount of fuel, let's say 82 tons worth of fuel, is going to now keep you going for 3 hours, whereas it used to keep you going for 2. Your fuel tanks are still the same size. You have a think about what that does to your battleship. She also spent some time in 1941 in the Birmingham Naval Shipyard. She gets there in August, and she has a nice time. She gets her 15-inch guns replaced. She gets a huge amount more anti-aircraft weapons, improvements to the bridge, new surface, an anti-aircraft radar. Ooh, she has a lovely time. She was actually still in that yard when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And there's this beautiful thing that goes out that she's going to be coming to fight with the Americans against the Japanese, and she does eventually get there, but she does go via the houses. In fact, though, when she's commissioned on the 20th of December, she ends up going down the west. She sort of undertakes the sea trials, and you know, she then goes down, must go through the Panama Canal. I don't know why I haven't put it on my notes, so maybe she doesn't. Maybe she somehow gets there without it. But she does the sea trials near Vancouver, sails down the west coast of the United States, and crosses the equator, arrives at Sydney on the 20th of February 1942, and then goes has another little quick refit, and then goes to join the Eastern Fleet at Trincomalee in March 1942. So she's there in time to be Somerville's flagship. It's a fun time. She has a fun time, and then she has in 1943 she has a short refit in Durban in 1943. And then that's South Africa, always another lovely place to go for a refit. Beautiful, no rationing, lots of beautiful countryside, huge issues economically during the wars, but they dealt with it, and she gets a nice refit, and the South Africans do a very good job. Anyway, now let's skip on. Perfect timing. That was actually 4 minutes. So HMS Illustrious. I didn't even need to press a button. HMS Illustrious. Well, she's a pretty good ship. She gets hit by 6 bombs from the Italians, which is a very unfriendly greeting, really. All she's done is launch strikes on their battle fleet and on their navy and on their land forces at various times. What's she done to deserve 6 bombs? Anyway, one does severe damage to her rear lift, and she gets all sorts of damage to her air defenses and her sponsons and pom-poms. So she needs the full refit, and it starts off with a refit in Durban quickly on the way home. So she gets to Alexandria. She's damaged, and she then has very temporary repairs put in there in Alexandria. Alexandria is usually for temporary repairs. They don't like having them in there too long. It's kind of like if you're doing repairs in Portsmouth or Plymouth or Chatham. It's very, very close to enemy bombers and enemy action. You don't want, and it's a very busy space. You don't want to have ships in there undergoing major work unless you have to. So you rather get them out of the way as quickly as possible. So she has temporary repairs. Then she goes down, of course, the lovely east coast of Africa. Lovely cruising spot. Goes into Durban, has far more repairs done, and then goes across the Atlantic to Norfolk, where she has fairly major repairs done, including a new lift and all sorts of other new things fitted. And modifications of the catapults for American-built aircraft and light aircraft goes on. It's all sort of things. But really, the most torturous thing she has while she's at refit in the United States in 1941 is she's Captain Lord Louis Mountbatten has made her captain. And he basically uses the time to go on a politics tour of America. And then, thankfully, before she actually has to go and do anything again, he's replaced by Talbot. So she's very good again for the lovely propaganda value. And she managed to get out of there in October. Has a small collision with HMS Formidable, but they managed to get going. In 1943, she has some more refits, and she has some late 1942. She goes in February 1942. She goes into Camel Air Shipyard, she goes into Camel Air Shipyards on about 3 occasions, and she has their refits there. She also goes back to Durban for a refit in November, between August to October 1944. She has lots of refits around the world. She has to. She's an aircraft carrier, and she's got steering issues thanks to the Italian bombs. So she has a lot of issues. Eventually, I think it's in Sydney, they decide to just stop her middle engine working as just an easy way to save things. But she has a lot of refits. Right, skip on. Royal Sovereign has 2 trips to the United States and does have some very extensive refits down there. But honestly, the Royal Navy isn't that bothered about her, which is why she ends up going out to become the Soviet battlecruiser Algiers. Basically, she's an R-class, and the R-class have not had the same level of attention as the Queen Elizabeth in the interwar years. You know, when I talked about War Sprite's fuel consumption going down from 41 to 27, the R-class haven't had the same loving. Next one of the R-class is Resolution, who also ends up going to visit the Americans, mainly because, well, it's a very simple solution. She is sent back to help out with an attack off Dakar to make sure that the French battleships aren't going to get out, and the submarine Belviziers of the French decides to torpedo her. She launches a full spread of torpedoes, only one hits. And so Barham is left to engage Richelieu by herself, and Resolution has to go off home. She goes to Freetown first. That's down the coast of Africa. And she has 6 months of repairs. Then she returns to Portsmouth, where she gets German air attack. Remember the point, you don't want to be there if you can avoid it. And then she crosses the Atlantic to the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, where she goes repairs and modernization and all sorts of things in her main battery turrets. The Americans have developed good technology for managing to raise the elevation of main batteries, and hers are able to elevate to 30 degrees, which significantly increase her range after this and all sorts of things. So that's quite good. But she then goes out, and of course she goes to the Far East, to the Eastern Fleet, and she hangs around there a bit. But by 1944, she's pretty much out of action in Britain, and they're just not going to do any more of her. So, next crybaby. I mean, Formidable. Right then, so Formidable does have a lot of fun, and if I'm going to be sitting here, you don't want to chop from the top of my head. I've had complaints about that before. Formidable has a fun war, and she really does spend a lot of time getting refit. She actually is bashed up at the same time as HMS Nubian loses a stern. HMS Nubian managed to carry on through the entire rest of the war, so does Formidable. She gets basically beaten up off Crete, and she ends up having to go. She has temporary repairs in Alexandria. There's a pattern here going on. Then pops down via Durban again, I think, for a bit more of attention, and then manages to go to Norfolk Naval Shipyard in the United States and has a full repairs there. Repairs were completed by December the same year, and so that's why she goes out with Illustrious and exercising with her big sister. They end up bashing into each other in a storm. Great ship handling, Royal Navy. Great ship handling. I should, if I'm going to move, I should make sure I move the microphone with me, shouldn't I? Hopefully that's all been good still. She managed to have some lovely time in Captain Cook Dock and Garden Island later in the year and later in the war. And the dockyard's labour force actually has to be augmented with other ones from Cockatoo Island Dockyard. And I just love the names of dockyards in Australia. They're just cool. Unfortunately, the problem was in Australia there wasn't any armour plate really available, so they had to use high quality steel rather than armour plate. It's not quite the same. It's not quite hardened in the same way. But more importantly, as part of the refit she gets in Australia, she has her island enlarged with an Admiral staff cabin and radar workshop. This is because her main refit happens before she's about to take over as the command ship for the 1st Aircraft Carrier Squadron of Admiral Vienna, so she has lots of space added into her to try and give space for the staff officers, and you do need staff. Sorry to people who say you don't. You do need staff to run a war. Next one. HMS Queen Elizabeth. Oh, by gum, does she have fun. So, Queen Elizabeth is often having a lot of funds and a lot of enjoyment. She has to be reconstructed quite a lot. She's actually undergoing quite heavy reconstruction at the beginning of World War II. Remember what I said about what happened to Warspite? Well, this is what Queen Elizabeth was pretty much having similar done to her. Engines, boilers replaced, all sorts of things. This is the 1937 to 1941 rebuild. Remember, the British stopped constructing in for about 2 years. Of sort of a lot of construction for about 2 years, 1939 to 1941. The idea is anything that can't be finished in time isn't for war, isn't going to be done. She doesn't get paused for as long as the new construction on aircraft carriers and battleships does, but she does get paused, which is why she takes well, it's quite so long. It's 4 years. It's 4 years versus Warspite's 3 years, but she has similar stuff done. And she comes out and she has a good time for a bit, and then she gets damaged, and she has to go to all sorts of places again. She gets damaged while in harbour by a human torpedo attack on 19th December 1941. And basically the British try and maintain it look like she's still fully operational, but she isn't. And but they patch her up using that cover. And then well, they have to go off, she takes about a year and a half to go back into service, and following completion of temporary repairs in Alexander Dry Dock in 1942, she is taken Suez Canal again, Africa, maybe stopping in Durban again, and the Navy Yard in Norfolk, Virginia. I was right earlier when I thought it was Virginia. Where she's there from September 1942 till June 1943 and is comprehensively repaired. Very, very comprehensively repaired. Again, rather like Warspite, she has, and Resolution, all the other ones, she has guns and things changed where they need to be and all sorts of stuff done. It's a very big major refit, and it makes sense again. Right, next one. Indomitable. Well, I haven't got any picture of her before and after pictures here because I just liked this where I found it. I know it's from 1951, so it's technically outside my period, but I don't care. I like the picture. Don't know. Anyway, so she has a fun time, Indomitable. She gets damaged by the usual 500 kilogram bombs, the armor-piercing ones. Oof, they're just nasty. And she again sails to the United States and has repairs. They has the full workup. And she comes back in 1943. She gets damaged in 1942, goes to the United States, has repairs, comes back in 1943, and gets damaged again by a torpedo bomber this time. And so goes to the United States again, where she has repairs. You noticing a point here? Every time she gets damaged, she goes to the USA, because again, they have the spare capacity, and they're quite nice and happy to do it. And we were slowly getting them trained at this point. They were slowly learning the differences between the British ships and American ships were. DNC was getting them firmly, trained. It's always a fun one. It's always a fun one. Right then. HMS Nelson. Oh, good God. Yeah. Again, damaged. In 1939, she detonates a magnetic mine. And she ends up having to go to dockyard repair in Portsmouth, where she's there till August 1940. You see, you do that till August 1940 because you've got the space to do it, and these things, but soon after that, the big yards become very, very problematic for repairs. In fact, even August 1940 is pushing it. Later on in Mediterranean, she gets hit by another Italian torpedo bomber. Oh, good lord. This torpedo bomber, this torpedo managed to make a hole in the bow, wrecking the torpedo compartment and causing flooding. Which fun times, but no casualties amongst the crew. That's all good. She managed to maintain her speed, so she retained with the fleet, and so the Italians didn't know they caused damage. And then she has emergency repairs in Gibraltar. Then she goes to Recife, and she's repaired there on May 1942. And finally, she's sent to the United States to have everything fixed up properly, and she's sent there in 1944. After providing naval gunfire, basically she provides naval gunfire support at Normandy, and it's almost pretty much straight in to home afterwards. These take off as many stores as you can and go across the Atlantic. And she arrives there on the 22nd of June. So work out how quickly she must have gone out. And she doesn't return to Britain until January 1945, and then she gets sent out to the Eastern Fleet. Ren, last one. Old leaky HMS Rodney. Right then, so Rodney is basically proof of the thing that you can have two ships which are technically the same, and one will be absolutely terrible and the other one won't be. Rodney was interesting, to say the least. Yeah. She develops leaks in and rudder issues in 3940, and the crew actually do their own refit and repair, affecting temporary repairs with welding and all sorts of things, but she does eventually have to go into yards. And first of all, she goes into Recife, but she then sort of gets called out because there are issues with German battleships basically causing problems. She takes part in the action versus Bismarck. She does well there, but thankfully she's already scheduled for a major refit in Boston after this, but she continues to suffer from all sorts of issues. And frankly, it's unsurprising. Let's put it this way. Rodney has so many ongoing issues that despite her being technically one of the newer battleships available, the Admiralty goes, right then, we have extensive plans for her modernization in 1944. They actually prefer to put the resources into HMS Vanguard and decide to put the resources into, I think, one of the Queen Elizabeth class carriers, which Queen Elizabeth class battleships. I'm sorry about that. I have done this video, tried to record it 4 times, and every time I keep saying carriers, I'm just giving up, okay? I wrote an article about Queen Elizabeth class carriers far too recently. So Queen Elizabeth class battleships, and they put the money into refitting them because Rodney was just such a pain to do, and she was. Anyway, so that's an introduction to some of the refits. Broadly speaking, the difference in refits are the reasons for why you're going there. You might have not heard me mention Durban in South Africa. Well, she's often mentioned as a place for emergency refits, but also towards the end of the war, quite a lot of the ships which are going there feel they don't need refit. They feel they're being sent to literally keep the economy going in South Africa, and that really was part of the reason they were being sent. HMS Eskimo is a good example of this. You also have the issues in Australia because Australia's constantly being used as a forward refit and repair hub, and they don't really have the infrastructure to support it. You know, the armor plate issue for formidable. Okay, nicest way. She's not got that requires as much armor as a battleship. These things all are factors and all are parts of the operations going forward, and they have an impact. Anyway, you have the American yards, which they don't know about electricity. The British and electricities, they have confusions with the British terms and these things, but they are still very willing to do it. And the fact is, they are very willing to do it from early on. And without that spare capacity, you'd had a lot of problems because the British yards are in range of the enemy bombers, and it's not good to have a large target stationary and not able to move. Is not good for it. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you later for the seminar. Toodles.